She kept her head down, translating documents no one else wanted to touch. Just another civilian contractor in a sea of uniforms. But when a colonel dismissed her correction about a critical intelligence report, she did something that made the entire briefing room fall silent. What happened next revealed a past no one saw coming. Welcome to Secrets Never Told. Before we begin this story of hidden valor and quiet brilliance, tell us in the comments where you're watching from today. And if you believe stories like this deserve to be remembered, hit that subscribe button and help us honor those who served in silence. The Pentagon's translation department occupied a windowless corridor in the building's C ring. Fluorescent lights hummed constantly, casting everything in a sterile white glow. Maya Chen had worked there for 3 years, arriving before dawn and leaving after dark, her presence as unremarkable as the beige walls surrounding her. At 34, she moved through the building like a ghost. Blonde hair always pulled back in a simple ponytail, blue eyes hidden behind plain reading glasses, her athletic frame concealed beneath oversized cardigan. She preferred it that way, invisible, unnoticed. Her cubicle sat at the end of the row, desk covered with Arabic, Farsi, and Pashto dictionaries. Red pens lay scattered across translations marked with her precise handwriting. Most contractors worked on commercial documents or low-level communications. Maya handled the difficult ones, the classified ones, the ones that kept generals awake at night. That Tuesday morning started like any other. She arrived at 0530, badge reader chirping as she entered the secure facility. The security guard gave his usual nod, never asking questions, never making conversation. Maya collected her assignments from the locked cabinet, each document sealed in a red folder marked with classification levels that would send most translators running. By 8 a.m., she had completed 3 translations that would take others a full day. Her fingers moved across the keyboard with mechanical efficiency, her mind parsing complex linguistic structures that most native speakers struggled to understand. She never made mistakes. Her work never came back for revision. The other contractors had stopped trying to befriend her years ago. During lunch breaks, they gathered in the break room, sharing stories about their weekends, their families, their lives outside these walls. Maya ate alone at her desk, headphones on, reviewing dialect variations in regional Pashto. She knew what they said about her: the ice queen, the robot, the woman who never smiled. "She's weird," Maya had overheard one contractor say last month. 3 years and I don't know a single personal thing about her. No photos on her desk, no small talk, nothing. Does she even have a life? Maybe she's just shy, another had replied, though the tone suggested they didn't believe it. Or maybe she thinks she's better than us. These military types, they're all the same. Maya hadn't corrected them. Better they think her arrogant or strange than dig deeper into who she really was. Better they never knew about the apartment she returned to each night, empty except for books in 6 languages. Better they never learned that she hadn't spoken to her family in 5 years because explaining her absences had become impossible. Better they never understood that isolation wasn't a choice, it was survival. "Chen!" a voice called from behind her partition. She looked up to find Marcus Webb, the department supervisor, a retired Army sergeant who ran the civilian contractors with military precision. "Briefing room in 10 minutes. Colonel Bradford needs real-time translation for an intelligence assessment." Maya's expression didn't change, though her stomach tightened slightly. Live translation was different, visible. She preferred the anonymity of written work, but assignments weren't optional. "Yes, sir," she replied, gathering her materials. The briefing room on the 4th floor was already filling when Maya entered. Officers in various uniforms clustered around a conference table, their conversations stopping momentarily as she took her position in the corner. She set up her equipment efficiently, avoiding eye contact, becoming part of the furniture. A young lieutenant glanced her way, then leaned toward his colleague. "That's the contractor? She looks like a librarian." His companion chuckled. "Probably can barely order coffee in Arabic, let alone handle operational intelligence." Maya's hand didn't pause in their work. She had heard worse. Colonel James Bradford entered precisely at 0830. At 52, he carried himself with the confidence of someone who had never questioned his authority. His uniform was impeccable, ribbons and badges speaking to deployments across multiple theaters. He took his position at the head of the table without acknowledging Maya's presence. "Gentlemen," he began, gesturing to the intelligence officers flanking him, "we have intercepts from the Kandahar region that require immediate assessment. The situation is developing rapidly." An intelligence analyst began playing audio recording. Voices in Pashto filled the room, urgent and coded. Maya listened intently, her pen moving across her notepad as she captured not just words, but context, tone, cultural nuance. She recognized the speakers immediately. One was a mid-level commander she had tracked for years. The other was new, but his accent placed him from the coast province, near the Pakistani border. "Translation," Bradford demanded after the first segment ended. Maya spoke clearly, keeping her voice voice neutral. The speaker references a meeting at the Blue House, which is likely code for a specific compound. He mentions supplies arriving on Thursday, but uses a term that suggests weapons rather than food or medical equipment. The urgency in his voice indicates, "Just the facts, Miss Chen," Bradford interrupted. "We don't need speculation." What did he say? Word for word. "With respect, Colonel, direct translation would miss critical context. The Pashto language relies heavily on word for word," Bradford repeated, his tone making it clear the discussion was over. Maya complied, providing literal translation that stripped away the intelligence value. She saw several officers exchange glances, recognizing the loss of nuance, but no one challenged the colonel. The briefing continued for 40 minutes. Each time Maya attempted to provide context or cultural interpretation, Bradford cut her off. His irritation grew more visible, his jaw tightening each time she spoke. One major, sitting near the back, kept watching Maya with a puzzled expression. Something about her seemed familiar to him, though he couldn't place it. The way she held herself, the precision in her movements, the absolute confidence in her translations despite being constantly interrupted. Finally, during the last intercept, Maya heard something that made her go rigid. The speaker used a phrase that was being mistranslated by everyone in the room, a subtle linguistic marker that completely changed the meaning of the intelligence. "Colonel," she interrupted, her voice stronger than before, "that last section requires correction. The previous translator marked it as a supply route discussion, but the phrase actually indicates—" "Miss Chen," Bradford said, his voice dangerously quiet, "are you suggesting that trained intelligence officers have misread this material?" "I'm suggesting the translation is incorrect, sir. The speaker is not discussing supply routes. He's confirming an imminent attack on—" "That's enough," Bradford slammed his hand on the table. "This translation was completed by a senior analyst with 15 years of experience. You've been here, what, 3 years? Doing paperwork in a basement office?" The room fell silent. Maya could feel every eye on her now. No longer invisible, no longer safely anonymous. "The translation is wrong," she repeated quietly. "Lives may depend on understanding what was actually said." Bradford's face reddened. "You're dismissed, Miss Chen. I'll be filing a complaint with your supervisor about this insubordination." Maya didn't move. Something in her shifted, a decision made in the space between heartbeats. She had spent 3 years hiding, 3 years being small and quiet and forgettable. But some things mattered more than safety, more than anonymity, more than the careful walls she had built around herself. She thought of the faces, the soldiers she had worked beside in Helmand Province, young men and women who trusted her translations with their lives, the intelligence officers who had waited hours for her assessments because they knew she never missed details others overlooked, the operations that succeeded because someone listened when she spoke. She thought of Lieutenant Mansour, bleeding out in her arms because communications failed. She thought of the interpreter who had trusted her, who had died protecting her cover. She thought of the ones who didn't come home because intelligence arrived too late, or was misunderstood, or was dismissed by someone who thought they knew better. "Colonel Bradford," she said, her voice carrying a different quality now, something harder beneath the surface. "That intercept is discussing an attack on Forward Operating Base Gardez. The phrase you translated as supply route is actually a time reference in a regional dialect. The attack is planned for 600 tomorrow morning." "Security!" Bradford called toward the door. "Remove this woman from—" "The speaker is a mid-level Taliban commander named Rashid," Maya continued, speaking over him. "He has a distinctive speech pattern because he's originally from the Coast Province. He uses formal Pashto mixed with local dialect markers that most translators miss. I know because I've been tracking his communications for 2 years through channels your intelligence analysts never see." The room had gone absolutely still. Bradford stared at her, his anger shifting to confusion. 3 years ago, Maya said, her voice steady, "I was Captain Maya Chen, Defense Intelligence Agency. I ran deep cover operations in Afghanistan and Pakistan for 8 years. I didn't translate from an office. I translated in compound raids, during interrogations, while extracting high-value targets from hostile territory." She could see recognition dawning on some of the faces around the table. Whispered stories of a DIA operative who could blend into any environment, who spoke 6 dialects of Pashto fluently, who had provided intelligence that saved dozens of operations. The major in the back row suddenly stood, his face pale. "Holy shit. You're the operative who pulled our team out of Sangin in 2019. You walked into a Taliban compound alone, convinced them you were a local aid worker, and got intelligence that located our position." Maya looked at him, remembering that operation, remembering the fear in those soldiers' eyes when she found them, remembering the careful negotiation in flawless Pashto that had saved their lives. "Major Richard," she acknowledged quietly, "you had a broken leg and wouldn't leave your radio man behind. You carried him half a mile." Richard said, his voice thick with emotion, then disappeared before anyone could get your name. Command wouldn't tell us who you were. Classified, they said. I received the Intelligence Star for work in Helmand Province, Maya continued, her eyes returning to Bradford. The Defense Superior Service Medal for operations I still can't discuss. I left active service 3 years ago after an injury and took this position because I wanted quiet work, because I'd seen enough, but I have never, not once, provided inaccurate intelligence. Bradford's face had lost its certainty. One of the other officers, a general whose nameplate read Morrison, leaned forward. Chen, he said slowly. Maya Chen. Jesus Christ. Your ghost? The code name hung in the air. Maya hadn't heard it in 3 years. Some of the younger officers looked confused, but the senior ones recognized it immediately. Ghost, the operative who had penetrated Taliban networks so deeply that even friendly forces didn't know where she was. The one whose intelligence had prevented attacks, located hostages, identified targets that satellites couldn't find. That was my operational designation, Maya confirmed quietly. General Morrison stood, his expression a mixture of surprise and something like respect. Captain Chen was one of our most decorated intelligence officers. She operated in environments where 99% of personnel couldn't survive. Her linguistic abilities and cultural knowledge were unmatched. He turned to address the room. In 2018, Ghost provided intelligence that prevented a coordinated attack on 3 NATO bases. In 2019, her work led to the recovery of 2 kidnapped aid workers who had been missing for 8 months. She operated completely alone, often for weeks at a time, in areas where capture meant torture and execution. Bradford had gone pale. The file didn't. My service record is classified, Maya said simply, by my request. I wanted to work quietly. But Colonel, that intercept is accurate. Gardes will be hit tomorrow morning unless you act on this intelligence. Morrison moved to the phone on the conference table. Get me CENTCOM operations immediately. He looked at Maya. Captain, I need you to provide a full breakdown of that intercept and any related intelligence you've identified. For the next 2 hours, Maya did what she had once done in the field. She analyzed, connected patterns, identified key players, and provided the kind of deep intelligence that only came from years of immersion in the culture and language. Officers who had ignored her presence now hung on every word. She explained how Rashid's network operated, the code phrases they used, the timing of their operations. She identified 3 other intercepts from the past week that, when properly translated, revealed the full scope of the planned attack. It wasn't just Gardes. They were coordinating strikes on multiple targets. This intercept here, she said, pointing to a transcript, mentions the teacher's house. Most translators would assume that's literal, but in this network, teacher is code for their explosives specialist. He's been in the region for 3 weeks. This isn't just an attack, it's a complex operation. A young intelligence officer raised his hand hesitantly. Captain Chen, how can you be sure about these code phrases? How do we know this isn't interpretation error? Maya looked at him directly. Because I spent 6 months living in a village 20 miles from Rashid's home district. I attended the same mosque. I spoke with his cousins, his childhood friends. I know how he thinks, how he speaks, what matters to him. That's how deep cover works. You don't just learn the language, you become part of the culture. The room absorbed this in silence. This wasn't the work of someone who had studied from textbooks. This was knowledge earned through risk, through years of living a double life where one mistake meant death. Morrison put down the phone. Gardes has been alerted. JSOC is mobilizing response teams to all potential target sites. They're taking this seriously. He paused. Captain Chen, they want you on the operational call. Your expertise could be critical in the next few hours. Maya nodded. This was what she had walked away from, what she had tried to leave behind. The adrenaline, the weight of lives depending on her accuracy, the impossible pressure of being the one person who could parse meaning from chaos. But as she moved to the secure video conference system, she realized something. She hadn't left because she couldn't do it anymore. She had left because she could never stop doing it, even when it was destroying her. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the inability to connect with anyone who hadn't lived that life. The next 6 hours blurred together. Maya coordinated with field teams, provided real-time translation of new intercepts, helped identify key targets. At one point, she found herself speaking directly to a special operations team preparing to raid one of the target sites, walking them through cultural protocols that would help them distinguish civilians from combatants. There will be women in the compound, she explained. explained over the secure line. But one of them, probably wearing a dark blue hijab, will be Rashid's sister. She's as dangerous as any of the men. She handles their communications. Don't underestimate her. The team leader on the other end responded, "Roger that, Ghost. Good to have you back, even if it's just for today." 40 minutes into the operation, a crisis erupted. A different team, approaching a compound near coast, had intercepted local communications, and their translator was providing real-time assessment. Maya heard it over the open channel, and her blood went cold. "Command, this is Viper 6, the team leader radioed. Local translator says civilians are confirming we're clear to approach. Multiple sources saying the compound is empty. Maya grabbed the secure phone. "Viper 6, this is Pentagon translation specialist Chen. Do not approach. I repeat, do not approach that compound." "Ma'am, our translator has confirmed." "Your translator is wrong," Maya cut him off, her voice sharp with urgency. "The phrase he's hearing isn't empty compound. It's a coast dialect variation that means the trap is set. They're using women's voices to lure you in. It's an ambush." Silence on the line. She could hear the team leaders breathing, the weight of the decision. Trust a contractor thousands of miles away, or trust the translator standing beside him. "How certain are you?" he finally asked. "I lived in that region for 6 months. I know that dialect. I'm certain." Another pause. Then, "Viper team, hold position. Requesting drone thermal scan of the compound before approach." 3 minutes later, the thermal imaging revealed what Maya had known. 15 armed fighters positioned throughout the compound, weapons ready, waiting for the team to walk into the kill zone. The compound was cleared by precision strike instead. 0 American casualties. "Ghost," the team leader's voice came back on the line, shaken but alive. "You just saved my entire team. We owe you our lives." Maya closed her eyes briefly, steadying herself. "Just doing my job. Stay safe out there." When it was finally over, when all teams had reported successful interdiction of the planned attacks with no American casualties, the briefing room erupted in quiet celebration. 17 confirmed captures, including Rashid himself. A major terrorist operation completely dismantled before it could begin. Maya stood apart from the celebration, suddenly exhausted. The adrenaline was fading, leaving behind the familiar hollow feeling she remembered from her operational days. General Morrison approached her, his expression serious. "Captain Chen, what you did today saved lives, probably hundreds of lives. We need people like you. I can have you reinstated with full rank within a week. Back pay, recognition, whatever you need." Maya shook her head slowly. "With respect, General, I left for a reason. I gave 8 years to this work. I don't have another 8 in me." "Then consult. Work from here, on your terms. The kind of expertise you showed today, that can't be replaced." "I'll think about it," Maya replied, though they both knew what her answer would be. Bradford had disappeared an hour earlier. Word spread quickly that he had submitted his resignation before anyone could file a formal complaint. His career was over, ended by his own arrogance. As the room emptied, Major Richards approached Maya one more time. "Captain, I know you want your privacy, but my team, the guys you saved in Sangan, we never forgot. We've talked about you for years, wondering who you were. Can I at least tell them your name? Let them thank you properly?" Maya considered this. For 3 years, she had hidden from recognition, from gratitude, from connection. She had convinced herself it was safer, cleaner, better for everyone. "Tell them," she said finally. "Tell them Captain Maya Chen, DIA, and tell them I said they're welcome." Richards saluted, a gesture of respect that had nothing to do with rank and everything to do with recognition of what she had sacrificed. Maya returned to her cubicle as the sun set beyond the Pentagon's windows. Her desk looked exactly as she had left it that morning. Dictionaries, red pens, classified documents waiting for translation. But everything had changed. Over the next few days, word spread through the building like wildfire. Contractors who had ignored her suddenly wanted to know her story, though she declined to share detail. Officers she had never met stopped by to thank her, some with tears in their eyes as they mentioned sons or daughters currently deployed. Someone left a coffee on her desk with a note that read, "From one ghost to another, thank you for coming back." Webb, her supervisor, appeared at her cubicle on the 3rd day. "Chen, I owe you an apology. I've had your file sitting in my cabinet for 3 years. I never opened the classified sections, never thought to look deeper." He paused, struggling with the words. "You could have told me who you were. Would it have mattered?" Maya asked quietly. "It should have," Webb replied. "The work should have spoken for itself. I'm sorry it took this for people to listen." But Maya kept her routine. Early mornings, quiet work, translations that saved lives in ways most people would never know. She declined interviews, refused commendations, turned down every offer to return to active operations. The difference was that now, when she provided analysis, when she she noted critical context. People listened. Her emails were answered within minutes instead of hours. Her assessments were forwarded directly to operational commanders. The quiet contractor in the corner cubicle had become someone whose voice mattered. 1 month after the briefing room incident, Maya received a classified message on her secure terminal. It was from one of the special operations team leaders who had participated in the Gardes interdiction. "Ghost, we got him. Rashid tried to run during the raid. He's in custody now, and the intelligence from his capture has already led to 3 more high-value targets. None of this happens without you. None of the people who are alive today because we stopped those attacks exist without you. You're still saving lives, even from that cubicle. Don't ever think what you do doesn't matter." Maya saved the message, then returned to her translation work. That evening, as she walked through the Pentagon parking lot toward her aging Honda, she paused. The setting sun cast long shadows across the building's massive walls. She thought about the younger version of herself, the one who had volunteered for operations no one else would take, who had believed she could carry the weight of every mission, every life, every failure. She had learned the hard way that some weights were too heavy to carry alone, but she had also learned that the work still mattered, even when done quietly, even when no one was watching, perhaps especially then. A new intercept had arrived, marked urgent, filled with the same coded language and cultural nuance that most translators would miss. She put on her headphones, opened her dictionaries, and began to work. Invisible again, anonymous again, but no longer forgotten. Some battles are fought with weapons, others are fought with word, with understanding, with the quiet courage to speak truth, even when silence would be safer. Maya Chen had fought both kinds and would continue fighting them in her own way, on her own terms, for as long as she was needed. Have you ever met someone ordinary who turned out to be extraordinary? Share their story in the comments below. Sometimes the most powerful people are those who choose to serve in silence. Subscribe to Secrets Never Told for more stories of hidden heroes and unspoken courage.